Welcome to the John Harrison Podcast. Do you realize that 70% of people are disengaged at work? I don't think it's an overstatement to call that a tragedy, actually, because it affects the bottom lines of organizations, certainly, but it has a negative impact on all the people that work there, and their families, and the community at large. Nobody's talking about this. Well, on this podcast, we are going to talk about it. Welcome to the John Harrison Podcast, and I'm excited today to have Grayson Greer as my guest. He's a friend of mine, but also just a young leader that I really just think is doing amazing things in his short life. I'm impressed with just how he handles a lot of things, just from dealing with people and difficult projects that he's been working on. And again, he and I touch base informally often, and it's an honor that I get to do that with him. But I wanted, today we're going to get kind of a young leader's perspective about what it's been like to transition from the academic life into the workplace and then into leadership as a young person. So before I do that, Grayson, if you could just kind of introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you and your story.
Yeah, thanks for having me, John. Appreciate the invite. Excited to be here today. So my story, it all starts, grew up in Little Rock, Arkansas, and attended the University of Arkansas, studied finance and accounting, and have always had a real, passion for entrepreneurship, for business. I come from a family of people in the finance kind of realm and in the management world of what it looks like to run a company, to serve clients or coworkers, and so really just come from that kind of upbringing of wanting to be in the business realm and be in the business world. And so studied finance and accounting in college. Thought that I wanted to go really the kind of investment banking route or kind of the consulting route. What really excited me was the opportunity to solve new challenges and problems and complex things for companies and different things that they were facing as they sought to grow their business. And it was actually in one of my interviews that I was interviewing for a consulting role where I was sharing a story about some of the work that I had been involved in India, where about halfway during the interview, they stopped the interview and they said, "Now I have a friend that has some business opportunity in India, and they do things with some development teams there, and you should meet with them." And for me, at the time, I was kind of like, "Well, the interview's over, hey, I'll reach out to them and would love to learn more of what that would look like." And that led me to a firm called First Rate, which is an investment performance and reporting solutions technology provider to wealth and asset management firms. And so graduated in 2018 and have been at First Rate since.
Awesome. And the other thing that I love about you, Grayson, is that you have a heart for people. You have a heart for kind of marginalized people, and I know that's a big part of why you do what you do too, and that people may not have picked up on that from what you just said, but I'm just going to tell our listeners that that's a big part of who Grayson is. He's humble about that, but his heart for people is pretty amazing as well. So as you made that transition from University of Arkansas just into the workplace, and I know your company was a little different too. It's not like it had been around forever and it had very established, policies and procedures and norms. But what was a challenge for you going from an academic role where you were obviously very successful into the workplace?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think definitely one of the things, maybe just off the bat, is very much in college, as you're thinking about your interests and your pursuits and what you're studying. A lot of it is thinking about you really, and where do I see my interests lying? Where do I want to work? Where do I feel like I'd be a good fit? And things like that. And I'd say I really think for when you move into the corporate world, that turns into your role, but your role as part of a team, which is part of typically a larger team, which is part of a larger organization. And so I think a lot of it was a mindset shift around, coming into, no matter what role you kind of come into in the workforce or in the workplace there are people that rely on you and rely on your responsibilities, and you have a responsibility to not only yourself, but to others, and to, seeing the, I guess, bigger picture, I would say, in terms of the organization. And I think a lot of times it's very it's easy to maybe get in a mindset of, it's kind of my own individual role. The implications may be only for me, but it really was a mindset shift for me, in thinking through, what implications does my responsibility have for the organization as a whole, and how can I, make an impact in the place that I work.
No, that's very well said. And I think for all of us, it's not that we're selfish at that point necessarily, but we are thinking about our success, our career, our income, all of that, and to all of a sudden be part of a team that now should cause us to do a step back and say, okay, well, this isn't all about me. How can I make others successful? How can I make our clients successful, etc. And I love that. You've now moved into a leadership role, and we'll talk about that more here in a second. But just in terms of when you started at the company, and again, I know you've been recognized for your work, and I know you're humble about that. What do you think set you apart as a young person coming into the workplace where people paid attention to you? Again, not for your own personal gain, but what caused them to look at Grayson differently than maybe what people think of the average young person?
Yeah, it's another great question. I think one of the things, and I'll attribute this back to a book I read that's called Leading Without Authority by Keith Ferrazzi. And I think one of the easiest things coming into the workplace is thinking, kind of going back to this responsibility piece of, I'm not in a leadership position, so it's not my responsibility to lead. And I think that having that mindset is really, I would say, tough, because it's actually everyone's job in the organization, whether they have the title or whether they have the status. It really is just, what does it mean to lead without authority? And, how to break down the silos and transform teams. And, you can lead and you can do that in a servant way. We hear a lot about what servant leadership looks like. Leadership doesn't have to come with the title. And I think, for me, I tried to have that mindset kind of going into my role, in that, it may not be my responsibility on paper or my direct KPIs or my, specific mandate. But if there's an area where I feel like I can contribute, and that there's a gap that needs to be filled, I feel like that was really the mindset I had coming into it, of, I want to be helpful and useful in whatever capacity I can be. And I think the other thing too that probably was very helpful for me, and in addition to kind of to this mindset, was around, for me, I really, I told my boss kind of early on, as we were kind of talking through, career path and positions, that I wanted to take advantage of opportunities and positions where the least amount of people wanted to step into those roles. And what I mean by that is roles that look difficult, ones that have steep learning curves, ones that are challenging, and ones that maybe naturally turn some people away because they're difficult, and they're ones that require learning. They require, failure to be able to succeed. They require things like that to really embrace the challenge of learning what that means to lead, and learning what that means to help create culture in ways that I hadn't before.
Yeah, I love that, and I know you and I have had lots of conversations about that in person and on the phone and over Zoom, and I love that approach, Grayson, and and just for our listeners, that a lot of my career was getting sent into facilities that were struggling, both financially, culturally, really almost everything not going well. And I remember one of my friends at Caterpillar at some point, after I did 2 or 3 of those, said, why don't you take like the easier jobs? Wouldn't you love to manage a Caterpillar plant that's just doing wonderfully, so you could kind of coast a little bit? And obviously from the human side of us, there's days I'm like, man, I wish we didn't have all these challenges, but I think you're right, Grace, and I think there's something special about that. And it doesn't mean, like you said, you're going to fail and you're going to get frustrated, but the best assignments, the nicest location, the office with the window, people jump on those real easily. But for somebody to say, yeah, I will take a second shift job, to help out. And I know that's not great for my personal life, but man, if we need help on second shift, I'll be your person. I'll go do that for a while. And again, that's part of kind of that servant leadership model that you said too, where it's not the best thing for me at this time, perhaps, but I'm willing to go where other people won't. And I think that's important, not only just for young people, but anybody in the workplace, because it's easy to point fingers at others and they're not doing a good job and why don't they know this? And I think it's interesting. I've used this example in our sessions before, but when you're watching a football game in your recliner and you're having snacks and having a drink watching the game, and you see, why did that running back go to the right? Like, he should have gone to the left. Like, look at that hole that was to the left of the... And that's just because you saw aerial replays, about 10 of them, and in slow motion, and that running back had to make that decision in 0.1 seconds, and he was obviously following a play that was given to him. And so we sit back and think it's easy, and why don't they do this or that? And I think for any age person, but certainly for young people, to go, no, I'm going to go into a tough situation here, and it's going to be challenging, but I'm going to be better on the other side, and that's certainly happened to you. So with that, now you're leading people, and I would assume some of those people are not all your age. So tell me, what's been the hardest thing for you in your early days as being a leader, just in general? And then how have you tried to maneuver this situation of having people that are older than you work for you?
I think a couple things. I'd say, and this kind of is a continuation of the previous question, where it's difficult to grow if you're comfortable. And I think that was one of the big things that I tried to tell myself, that, growth comes from being and embracing in the uncomfortable, ness of situations, of, how things are. And so what does it look like to embrace that? And I think one of the difficulties, coming into a management or a leadership per se position was somewhat being uncomfortable with some of the situations. I actually had in one of my, about a month in, I was on a call with a executive at one of a large bank that's a prospect of ours, and they actually asked me my age on the call. And that was a very interesting situation for me, for being someone who, I guess at first glance, or even just a perception when meeting people and speaking to people, whether it's age, whether it's background, whatever it may be, kind of coming in with these perceptions around. Are you too young to be a leader? Or are you too young to be in management. And I think that for me, I continue to go back to that, anyone can lead, and anyone can lead without the authority or the title. It really is a mindset thing, and it's a mindset piece. And I think that also transitioned for me. I was transitioning into a role where I did have and do currently today have people that are reporting to me that are older than me, ones that potentially that I've reported to in the past. And I think, again, going back to the key word for me being mindset, is that really trying to set the tone early on that, I want to be their champion. And I want to learn from them. They have years of experience and in many cases more experience than me, on specific industry things or even within the company, being able to, work together, and leverage their knowledge, leverage their expertise versus it feeling more like a reporting structure or one where it's, top down thinking or, top down telling people what to do. So I think a lot of it kind of was around trying to have that humility to recognize and even verbalize, so call it out that, I can see what you may be feeling here or what you may be going through here that, and this is difficult. And, I want to be your champion. I want, your support and your buy-in, and, helping us all achieve the same goals. Because at the end of the day, we're all, we all have our personal goals, but, as part of the, company, we all want success for the company.
Yeah, Grayson, I love that. I think it's difficult to have this combination of confidence and humility at the same time, because you can't come in at any age of a leader and be, timid about everything and apologetic for getting the position and just kind of, sitting in the corner and not speaking up. I think people will jump on that and say this person's clearly not ready because they're afraid to even make a decision and all that. But you also can't come in like, well, I'm the new sheriff in town and all you old folks don't know what you're talking about because I've got it all together. And I think that was perfectly said to cut across that, some of those preconceived notions by what can we all agree on here? We want our clients to be successful. We want this organization to be successful. We want a position, a career that brings us, joy and happiness, and we want to be able to have a good home life. And so I'm here to help with all of that any way I can, but I know I need to learn things. And I think you said that very well. And it's hard because I've said this in our sessions before. When I was a young leader like that, and people clearly, when I walked in the door in North Carolina, when I started that facility or took over that facility in Australia and other places, people instantly went, well, you're young and this is going to be terrible. And my counter to that is, that must mean that every 50, 60, and 70-year-old leader is fantastic, which we know isn't the case. So age by itself doesn't determine leadership qualities. Certainly there are some good things with experience, technical experience and all of that. But again, well said about how you kind of navigate that.
The other thing I would add there too, John, is that I think, the key piece being the relationship aspect of, developing the relationship with those people, focusing on that. And then some of the best advice I was given too was analyzing and witnessing before prescribing or making changes. And so one of the big things I did, I made it very clear to our team when I came in that I was going to, be basically watching and kind of taking a front seat, but also a back seat to analyzing the situation for, 90 days. before I was making, decisions or large changes in direction. And I think my team really valued that because, kind of coming in, there was a lot I needed to learn. And there was a lot that they were able to teach me and guide me and help me understand the situation that we were in. Now, coming out of those 90 days is where I was given the opportunity to then provide the direction. And at that point, I did demand that, people get on board with the direction. But I think because I set it up in that, the first 90 days was, instead of prescribing and making immediate changes, it was, really them educating me on the situation. And then us all, getting on the same page around what that looks like, that we were able to actually move forward in a really healthy way after those 90 days.
Yeah, that's very wise. Again, not again, new sheriff in town, but I need to know the people and the situations and the processes and the problems. And once they see that you're spending time doing that, and now, if you get in front of a room and go, well, here's some of the problems I see with our daily work or serving our clients, whatever, and they're going to generally nod their heads to that and say, yeah, okay, he's getting it. Like he's listened to us, he's experienced it, and now what do we all think we need to do to make this better? Again, very, very wise. And so I am going to ask you this just for fun, but how old are you, Grayson? I want to just be like one of those guys and ask you that. How old are you?
Yeah, I'm 26 years old.
Okay, so what you just heard did not sound to me like a what we think of as a 26-year-old, so to speak. And in our sessions, we try to do a lot to kind of blow through a lot of those stereotypes, both from older folks thinking that all young people are the same, and younger people thinking everybody that's 60 and older is kind of past their prime and all that. And that's really dangerous to the workplace, and we're missing out if we do that. It's interesting in our society that we know it is absolutely wrong, incorrect thinking to say that, people that are all from the same race think alike or are the same, or people with all the same income levels are exactly the same, or all people from this geographic area are the same. But you can certainly see that it's allowed in our society to say that everybody of a certain age group is the same. And so one thing that is unique about our sessions when we get into that subject is that we try to look at it very differently. But I'm just I'm encouraged by the young generation in many ways, even though many people are frustrated by them. And Grayson's a perfect example of that for his obviously passionate intellect, but his humbleness and how he's approaching his role. And so, Grayson, thanks for being with us today. It was an honor to have you, and probably won't be the last time, so get ready for another episode sometime. But thanks for being part of this today. Thanks for listening today. If you have any questions or thoughts about today's episode, or even ideas for a future episode, you can contact us through our website at johnharrisonvip.com or follow us on any of our social media platforms.